Hi, and welcome to today's video, which is kind of a two-in-one. So, a while back, while just walking and exploring the marshes behind this area where I live, I managed to hurt my foot, so I haven't really been able to walk lately, but I'm recovering and doing some self-therapy, whatever you wish to call it. So I'm able to do things again. So I was able to ship the past few weeks of orders and upload the most recent video that was recorded a month ago. And that is why this video is the Q&A for both March and April, from the questions that I've been getting in the comments lately, in the more recent videos and some older ones, but more recent than not. And as always, if you have further questions or requests, let me know in the comments below. It's been a weird week here. It's snowing in the morning and sometimes in the night, and then over the day it is sunny and it disappears again. So, for example, this morning it was 2 degrees, now it's 10, closer to 12 sometimes. It was between 15 and 20 the week before, so it's a bit hard to plan some of my videos as I want to continue doing the guitar series, but it's limiting, as you may understand. And in May I'm also resuming work, so that means that I will have access to a different location which has Wi-Fi, so I will start doing some live streams from there, which will be anything from just philosophy, rambling, after work, drinking, and it will have a chat. So any one of you who joins me during the live stream can ask me anything, and I'll do my best to keep up with the questions and keep a conversation going. And right now I don't know at what time those things will take place, but as soon as I know, I will make a specific video about it, so that it will be easier for any one of you to find me during that live stream instead of finding it after. I think for a couple of months it will be an interesting way to interact and discuss things and see what happens. So I'm working on some videos about other subjects than what I'm covering here and what I've been covering the past few weeks and months. So that's why I chose to resume this with the psychiatric aspects of things, and then we'll continue to move on more towards philosophy and art and music and other things like that. So, for example, one of the reasons why I chose to be a bit vague about my experiences when it comes to therapy and psychiatry, medication and treatment and so on, was that in the context that me and Johan were discussing it, I think it was clear that he, for example, got medicated at a very young age, while I was denied medications. Except for a few exceptions when it comes to certain kinds of medications that they prefer to give to people, especially younger people, which I find a bit strange when it comes to the things that you actually learn about these medications and substances, and especially their side effects. And I think that's also one of the reasons why videos like this gets suppressed and this kind of information isn't welcome. Because there is a lot of money in it. And of course, over the years, I've had plenty of experiences and experimentation with different medications. That I've, of course, accessed through other channels. Because the only things that they were willing to give me were SSRIs, which has some nasty side effects. And in my case, it led to fatigue and insomnia and increased depression. And of course, that depression is supposed to decrease over time, and then you're helped in some other way, especially if you employ therapy. But that's more of a vague or broad term, as that requires you to actually be a more regular person for that kind of strategy to actually work. Like if you are content on being a regular person with a regular life, then you'll do fine in that program. But that doesn't really work for me. And when it comes to many of the things that I have problems with in life and society, the most not traditional would be a wrong term or word for it, but when you search for treatments on it, you often find the term exposure therapy. In other words, walk it off. Isn't that comforting? And another thing that I like to experiment with when it comes to some of my symptoms that I had over the years from either insomnia and anxiety and depression. Which are more trance-induced and insomnia-induced experiences, which in many cases still persists for me, like misophonia and related. Audio things, or also visual aspects of it, in my case, is that they wanted to prescribe me various neuroleptica, and I've never heard anyone have a positive experience on those substances or medications. I think if you really are deteriorating and can't see the difference between hallucinations and reality, and have the access or ability to be at a facility, then that can be very helpful for you. But I don't have time for that. And I've always been the kind of person that is comfortable with being the opposition. So when someone gives me a challenge, I'm not afraid to take it. And of course, I'm aware that that's not their intent when they say that I have to take medications that makes me unable to sleep and other things, and force me to be around people more than necessary, and be around sounds and frequencies that makes me anxious and nauseous, and so on. I don't really have any good answer beyond that, but of course I've had my share of interactions with psychiatry and therapy, and it's been enough to do like a handful of sessions for me to just get around certain thresholds that just broadens the perspectives a bit, because it's easy to dig holes and put yourself in boxes. When you become aware that you're doing that, then it becomes easier as well to address what you're doing and find solutions to the problems. So, for me, what therapy and psychiatry does is similar to what marijuana or LSD or mushrooms do to some other people, that they don't need to experience it more than once or a couple of times to get something out of those lessons that those tools gives you. But over the years, for me personally, psychedelia is a better doctor for me. But that is provided that you actually have the mental tools necessary to actually use the lessons that gets thrown at you from the chaos and the emptiness through the void and wherever is beyond it. So when it comes to things like misophonia, that's one of the reasons why I live like I do. I don't do this for fun. It's a necessity for me. And being long-term in silence and away from people as much as possible is what enables me to work at hectic restaurants or be on concerts or tours around a lot of people and interact with people, as well as doing something like this where I'm talking to you and just taking the time to think about all of the different things that I get asked. And finding an actual perspective on it and not just a blanket statement. Yes, I don't get bored or crazy by being alone or having silence. But I do tend to instead become more sensitive to exterior stimulation, or in other words, sounds from the world, which has its positives and negatives. Because I do have a few neighbors closer than I would want them to be, which means that I hear traffic, I hear car doors slamming, and it infuriates me, breaks my focus, gives me anxiety. But I am aware that it's much worse in the city. And in many cases they're not aware of how loud they are because they live in their own little world. Everyone has their own bubble. It's just a fact of life. One of the beauties with being detached from civilization like this is that it creates a certain kind of clarity in sounds and frequencies of nature, and the trees around here makes interesting waves of sound that to me becomes rhythms and patterns. Which in turn of course turns into songs. And when it comes to subjects like this, I've only been demonetized, but I haven't had strikes on my channel, fortunately. But over time, just the last year, it's been more and more safeguards added to the process of uploading something, which makes me tired. It just draws from my energy that I need to put into these things. And unfortunately, that can some weeks be enough for me to not upload a video if I don't have several prepared and scheduled for the upcoming weeks. And that's why there's sometimes weeks without videos. So I would like to have 1 or 2 videos uploaded each week. But some days I just can't deal with being around people. I don't have the energy for it. And with the COVID, they also shut down the library in the city. At least the part of it where I was used to be able to sit and upload my videos and other things. So now I'm forced to go to the train station, which is much more busy and loud with people and other things, which doesn't help. But that's one of the reasons why I have the Patreon, so that even if I'm for a whole year wouldn't get any other proceeds from this channel, that enables me to have some more freedom. And then of course I have my web shop, which is always accessible through, there's links in the comments section, like in the description field of each video, and of course through my domain enjoy.com, which I've had since 2004. It's still up. Just click on anything there and you get redirected to places where my work can be supported. As for what guitar I use, I assume that that question is about what I've been using in the last year's guitar videos. And that's a Yamaha guitar that I've borrowed from a friend. And in the upcoming videos I'm going to use my new guitar, which is a Mora Dreadnought by Hagström. Then when it comes to recording wise, the majority of my previous Hypothermia albums and some Consider Suicide albums were through my old ESP Eclipse guitar. And I've also recorded some through the Hagström Viking model guitar that I borrowed from a friend when I recorded with him. And then I've used some Fenders and LTD guitars on different things, depending on who I'm recording with. And then I'm not completely sure if it's a LTD or Ibanez or other brand that I've used when I was with Dea at his studio in Belgium. I can do another video about that another time. As for what DAW I use when recording, I've mainly at home used Logic because I have it on my old iMac, and in the past before that, with both Hypothermia and Life Lover, we used to use Adobe Audition. But after Adobe got it and they increased the paywall on it, it didn't feel like it was worth using, and that's why I used Logic instead, because it was more accessible. And then the last years I've also a lot for Consider Suicide recordings. I've used Reaper as well. So right now I'm using, depending on different projects and albums, I'm using either Logic or Reaper. And when it comes to doing vocals, I used to be a lot more quiet and shy when I was younger. Still pretty shy in some situations, though I'm used to forcing myself out of that. But when it comes to doing vocals, I've just been practicing making different sounds over the years, and in the beginning I had to force myself, and that's why my voice used to be a lot more broken in the past, because I would lose it between the different sessions and the day after, because I wasn't really used to using it in that way, because there is some registers that can be damaging to access if you're not doing it properly, and I've lost my voice many times because of that. And when I'm home here by myself, I have the habit of just exploring and experimenting with sounds. And seeing what can fit with different ideas that I have for songs and albums. And any tips or advice that I could give concerning it? Is simply to be careful and patient and let it take the time that it needs. And I think when you're just talking, and if you pay attention to things like if you're reading or talking about something, there is different ways to attenuate words, and if you're trying to be more international, or if you let yourself have your own dialect and accent and so on, there's many different ways to make your own voice and vocals special for you, or less special, depending on what your goal is. I think generally if you're talking or doing vocals, you have a pitch that is comfortable for you. You can see how loud or long that you can make different words or sounds and keep them that way. I don't have any training myself in anything, especially not vocals. I can't sing properly. That's why I prefer to refer to it as making sounds or noises. But if it sounds good or interesting, that's what matters, that's what counts. Because the voice is an instrument. And it's not just about expressing words, but to express moods and emotions and atmosphere. And that's what takes most practice, I think, to make it a really honest and immersive kind of experience, both for you and the listener. I think that's one of the beauties of making music or art or whatever we wish to call it. So let's end this particular video with another question that I've gotten a few times the past few months, which is about my psychiatric diagnosis. And I can do a bit more than just saying a few words. It's been not 15 years, but more than 10 years, so I don't remember the exact year that I was diagnosed, because I had a waiting time for getting the like it's called like an investigation, where I have had to take different tests at the Center for Neurology and Psychiatry at the hospital where I used to live before. And then of course it took a while for them to make their call on it. Which was of course also connected to the therapy sessions and explaining to them kind of my views and philosophy on life and my current experiences back then, and what different things that I felt and had more or less issues with, both mentally and more cognitive things. So the conclusion they came to is that my main diagnosis, or I know that that's not a proper term, but that's what's first on my list. So there is a few things on there, but on top of my list, which is a weird way to refer to it, because it's neither better or worse than anything else, it's just, it is what it is. And that's what's referred to as Asperger's syndrome. And that can mean a lot of different things. And about a decade or so before I had my investigation and diagnose, my little sister, who is 2 years younger than me, got that diagnosis through her school, so I was aware of what that meant and how it affected her in like her social life and in school and things like that. And I used to help her with different aspects of her homework sometimes that were framed or written in a way that she didn't understand, but as a person like me who is used to thinking in metaphors and picking things apart, it is natural for me to reorganize things in a way that can make more sense to other people. I think that's one of the useful or helpful ways to think about it, is to either have a need or requirement to read, see, or hear things from a different perspective. Because there is various thresholds in different parts of the mind that can cause limitations. It's like blanking on something. But it can be applied to many more things. Then, to no surprise to anyone, I'm of course also diagnosed with depression. And on that list is also borderline. But that's more like there's aspects of it that over the years I've been more able to, I'm not sure what to call it, like with practice, some of the things that may limit you in life can become a strength instead. I only notice it when I'm around other people, and especially when interacting with them or being confronted about something that I have limitations in, and then I get reminded of the different things that I sometimes forget that I do or think. Because there's many things that feels natural to me, but isn't natural to others. And that is something I've noticed becomes frustrating to others. But it's a part of me, and it's what you get when you interact with me. It's a part of the deal. I've gotten a few longer comments and questions the past few weeks too that I think are very interesting, so I'm going to do a separate video where I address some of these in a subject-based video, like I usually do with some of my other videos. And with that, I thank you all for taking your time to watch and listening. And as I mentioned before, if you have questions or requests about subjects or any in-depth or explanation of something that I've talked about here that you think would be interesting to hear more about, let me know, and I'm more than happy to go further. See you next time, and take care.